Hi, my name is Melanie Belil, and I'm a realtor in Calgary, Canada with Ben Sweet, Justin Becker, and Associates. And with Trump's inauguration looming, it'll be tomorrow as of the time I'm filming. It's on a lot of Canadians' minds the impact that his tariffs will have on Canadian goods, and even more so, the impact it'll have on Canadian real estate. So, my goal in the next few minutes is to go over the facts in the last few weeks leading up to his inauguration. And then, based on those facts, we can really have a better idea on what will likely occur in the event that Trump decides to stick with his guarantee of slapping a 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican goods. So Trump has clearly stated on X that the tariffs alone created this vast wealth for our country. Tariffs will pay off our debt and make America wealthy again. So of course the goal of these tariffs is to make America more reliant on their own goods rather than paying for goods that are coming from outside of the country. And as of a couple weeks ago, Premier Doug Ford in Ontario said that in 2 weeks, the president-elect will be sworn in as America's next president and will have every opportunity to make his threats real. So between now and then, and really now or the evening before, the federal government needs to do everything humanly possible to avoid those tariffs. So it seems like across the board, then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and nearly all of the premiers signed a document saying that they would take the necessary steps it would take to counter these tariffs. Trudeau then accused Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta, for not putting Canada first because she refused to sign the plan, effectively the letter that the Government of Canada was to present to President-elect Donald Trump. So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau effectively said Premier Danielle Smith is not putting Canadians first. So although Trudeau and 12 of the 13 premiers agreed to form a united front and that quote unquote everything is on the table to fight the potential tariff war, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says that if the federal government imposes an export ban on Alberta oil going to the United States as a retaliatory measure against expected U.S. tariffs, it would precipitate a quote unquote national unity crisis. So therefore, Smith said Alberta would not agree to impose tariffs on energy or other products being exported to the United States. So overall, Trump has proposed the 25% levy on all Canadian goods, including Alberta's oil and gas, which he promised to impose shortly after taking office on Monday. He also suggested that the tariffs are part of a larger strategy to annex Canada through his quote-unquote economic force. And Smith has cautioned Ottawa against blocking energy exports to the U.S. in response to tariffs, calling it an empty threat. So even though Smith is under the impression that these are empty threats, that the 25% tariffs will not happen, the rest of Canada doesn't seem so certain. Given all signs point to the 25% tariff being a go, this would result in Canadian goods being 25% more expensive for American buyers. So Americans will be more incited to purchase goods that are made in America, and this will result in a decreased demand for Canadian goods, so people will buy less of them. And the result is that Canadian businesses and industries make less profit from our largest trading partner, but the impacts have potential to go beyond that. So let's talk about what those impacts could be. So economist Mike Moffat really points out the tight relationship that Canada and the United States has and the impact it'll have not only on Canada's economy, but more specifically on Canadian real estate. And he says that if we're not able to export things or have difficulty exporting things, there's going to be job loss, there's going to be economic decline, and that's going to impact the housing market. You're going to have fewer people with the ability to buy homes, not unlike what we saw during the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. And if we take into account the possibility that Canada retaliates with counter tariffs, effectively taxing, let's say 25% on American-made goods coming into Canada, this will just increase the cost of living for Canadians who are already spread pretty thin. And if we think specifically of any building materials that are being imported from America increasing 25% in cost, that cost will be translated onto the buyer of these new construction builds. So there's going to be a little bit of a counterbalance in terms of if there's fewer people who are able to buy homes, so this will lower demand. But at the same time, if goods are becoming more expensive and the cost to build is becoming more expensive, it'll increase the cost of housing. So typically, when you have lower demand, costs decrease in consequence. But here, regardless of demand, if the cost to build increases, then at the end of the day, the bottom line requires that the cost of these new construction increases. So the bottom line when it comes to real estate is if construction materials become more expensive, the cost of housing will increase, and in turn, the Bank of Canada will likely have to further cut interest rates in order to counter the challenging issues that we're facing with housing affordability. In contrast, it's speculated that in the United States, Trump's tariffs would lead to inflation, and that would cause the US Federal Reserve to increase interest rates. So as interest rates are being increased in the States and decreased in Canada, that creates the perfect storm for a weakened Canadian dollar. So Dan Lundenberg summarized that if Trump comes in and imposes across-the-board tariffs on everything, it will have a huge impact on supply chains and the cross-border flow of goods and products that are used in the real estate industry. So if there's less demand for Canadian products from the United States, this will result in likely job losses, less GDP growth, and also an overall slowing of the Canadian economy. It will also be met with increased housing prices. So not only will Canadians have less money to put towards housing, the cost of housing will also increase. So overall, the bottom line of these tariffs is very likely just aggravating Canada's affordability crisis when it comes to housing. So despite the doom and gloom, I really look forward to seeing what's going to happen the next few weeks if Trump will in fact put the 25% tariff in effect that he promised he would. And that will give us more data in terms of what we can expect in the upcoming months. But at this point, it's still just a lot of speculation. So if real estate is something that you're passionate about or you're interested in or you want to learn more about, please reach out. Like I said, my name is Melanie and I'm a realtor here in Calgary, so I do specialize in Calgary real estate. But if you're thinking of buying or selling or just learning more about the ins and outs of real estate, I'll be happy to chat.